Welcome back. I'm Crispy. Today I'm going to be talking about Easy D6, a small game, but a game that I think is worth your time. I think you should try it. It's published by Runehammer Games. It was originally published in 2022, so it's relatively new. The author is Scott McFarland, but you know him better as DM Scotty. He's created about a 109-page rule set here. It's all based around a very light and fast mechanic. I want to share with this because I don't expect that many people have tried this. I could be wrong. Unlike my review of Traveler, where I expect that I may be late to the party with that one. Most people have played Traveler, or a lot have. And if you haven't, please check it out. It's worth your time. This is relatively new. Unlike the Traveler published in 1977, this one brand new, 2022. Okay, so what is the key shtick here? What is it about Easy D6 that is worth exploring? Like, you should take a look at this if you want to try what they call a fantasy mayhem type game, and I think that moniker fits. The game mechanic is as you would expect. It's just a D6. Aside from it's just a D6 roll, beat a target number. Because it's using a D6, you can imagine target numbers don't very they're not. It's 2 to 6 essentially, with a few caveats to that. There's some things that may be a little higher, in which case you'd have to perhaps use some karma. Now that's the mechanic. The aside from magic, I mentioned this karma thing. You start off with karma, and whenever you fail a roll, you increase your karma by 1. Karma is spent as a currency to increase the result of your dice roll, except for magic. Now, there's another thing you have where if you're skilled in something, if I'm playing a ranger type character and I'm skilled with ranged weapons, then I have a boon in ranged weapons. I'd roll 2d6 and take the higher result. Now, likewise, if I'm attempting something that is very difficult, I might have the rabble rouser, or what's called that's the game master in this system, may determine that that's exceptionally difficult, in which case I have a bane on the roll. I'd roll 2d6 and then take the lower result. It's the last thing to tell you about in terms of the actual dice mechanic, and then I'll go into some of the other things about this system. You have what's called a heroic dice. Each session you have one of these, and that allows you to re-roll any d6 that you've rolled. So if you rolled a check and you don't like the result, even if you rolled a 1, which is always supposed to be a big failure, with your heroic dice you can have a do-over on that. Most of the time you'll only have 1. There are some exceptions to that. I'll get into that just in a minute. Armor works differently too. Armor, you roll your d6 to see if the armor is effective. The target number you're trying to hit with your armor check is dependent on the type of armor you're wearing. So heavier armor will have a lower difficulty number to reach when you roll your d6. That's how that works. And it'll reduce the incoming damage by 1. Damage is also something that's different in this. It uses a strike system, and it is very much the 3 strikes you're out. Most characters will have only 3 strikes. Every weapon in the game does 1 damage on a successful, or 1 strike on a successful hit. They can crit, however. A roll of a 6 or a dice roll that was modified via karma to get to a 6 will immediately prompt another d6 roll. If that dice roll is a 6, or by using karma, you lift it to a 6, you roll it again until such time that you no longer are able to confirm a critical. Each confirmed critical will add 1 strike of damage to that hit. Well, you can imagine if you have a resource, or if you've saved up your karma, you can have a very devastating blow, potentially. So that's how damage works. The other thing that's very different in this game, as a rules-light game, is the way magic works. It's much more free form. if you're used to, like me, if you're used to grimoires of multiple spells of all different levels, that's not here. Instead, it's much more free form. And it uses a resistance roll mechanic. The opponent or the target of the magic first rolls their resistance, and then the caster decides after that roll is made if they're going to increase the power of their spell. In other words, roll more d6 to see if they can match or beat the highest resistance roll. Now, there's a trade-off here. You cannot use karma to increase your spell check result. You can use your heroic dice, and you can use a heroic dice on the result of a 1. If you roll more than 1 dice, if any of them up to 3 that you roll result in a 1, well, then the spell automatically fails and you take damage. You take a strike yourself, which they call spell burn. So very free form. You decide what the magic is doing, but it is an opposed roll situation. Characters, and let's talk a little bit about this. When you make a character in Easy D6, you start off by deciding your heroic path. The easiest way that I could describe this is that's similar to class. And that'll set your base abilities and a few class-specific abilities. Next, you pick your race. When we tried this out, for the most part, we were playing human characters. But there are others. You can play other races if you'd like. After deciding that, you then customize your class via what are called inclinations. You can think of those similar to feats. And if you're playing a human character, you'll have 3. If you're playing a non-human character, you'll choose 2. And then you finally round out your character via aspects. And the aspects is a little different. It's a little more freeform. You choose 2 of these, and it is suggested in the book that you could, instead of choosing these at character creation, you could have those created via gameplay, which I think probably is a more interesting way of doing that. All right, so that's my overview of Easy D6. Excellent artwork throughout, really great. I like DM Scotty has included the staple monsters that you would expect in a fantasy mayhem game. But his homemade monsters, I think that's where the money is. There's some really interesting things that he's done that I liked a lot, and I ended up using those exclusively when we ran this. What do I like about the game? Here's what I like. I like how fast the dice resolution is. It goes quick. It's easy to teach new people. If you want a quick game, you don't have a lot of time, and you don't want to go through all of the complexities of a rule system, this one doesn't have a lot of complexities. So it's easy to bring people in. Crits are deadly, which I love. I love this idea that you can use your karma to turn that hit into something truly devastating, maybe laying low an enemy in just one blow. That's cool. It feels great. The target numbers are easy to remember because it's a D6 system. You don't have to think, okay, well, modifiers on this, modifiers on that. It isn't a lot of bookkeeping. The freeform magic versus spell lists, that encourages exciting creativity. And if any of you are brave enough that you've watched some of our actual plays, you can tell this creativity is something that we're very interested in our space, our little corner of role players. I have to say that I really like that. That was one of the key things, I think. If I was going to take something from this system that DM Scotty has made, boy, I'd love to plagiarize that or just steal that magic system. I really like it. There is something I dislike about it, and I'll talk about that next as I go through my dislikes. But the karma mechanic also adds some depth to what is a very quick and easy rule system. What I mean by that is you have a decision to make as the player. Do you use karma that you already have to avoid a failure? Or do you allow the fail? You just don't spend the karma. You have a failed roll, which adds to your karma so that you have a larger reserve that you can use when the time is right. That's there's some depth to that. So we talked about that, my friends and I, as we were having a recap of that session and talking about what we liked, and that came up. And I agree, it wasn't a thought that I came up with myself, but one of the players, he mentioned that he really liked that idea that you have that choice to make. Do I take the failure, or do I, what's in that moment, you make that decision. All right, so no game is perfect, and there are a couple things I didn't quite care for with Easy D6. The one thing that became apparent right away, there's very little progression in this game. It's not a level up game. As your character gets more experienced in the world, you could, I suppose, give them more inclinations, but the list it's not that lengthy. The other suggestion in the book is that, well, they gain an experience via the treasure that they have, or the renown that they build in the fictional world. But I do think that this is a game more suited for a brief session. Like, maybe not a one shot, maybe you could get a couple sessions out of it. I think that over time, I'm not sure that it would be one that would have significant staying power. It's a little dissatisfying that all your weapons do the same damage. I understand why it's done that way, and it simplifies things a lot by just saying, well, the dagger does the same damage as the battle axe, but that feels a little dissatisfying. So I wasn't thrilled with that. Rolling magic resistance. Now, I already heaped praise on the magic system because I really do like the free-form nature of the magic system. However, and please understand, this is a criticism coming from me, and as much as I love this system, I really am into in-character role play. Like, when we start a game, we want to stay in character the whole game as much as possible. And the system of having the target of magic roll their resistance first, so that the player can then see that result, and then on a somewhat out of character metagame type decision, they then decide, well, how much power am I going to put into this? And I suppose what you could do to resolve this dislike that I have is you could say, well, there's some kind of visual thing, or it's a mental thing that the wizard knows, the caster knows that there's that level of they could probably explain it within the world so that it doesn't feel so, I'm just looking at a dice roll somehow, and how does my character know what that dice roll is so that they could. So it wasn't my favorite component of that system. Again, I do think there's ways around it, in terms of a justification perhaps that makes sense within the world. For me, as someone who wants an in-character experience. All right. The last criticism I have is that when you go through character creation, it becomes very apparent that some inclinations are much, much better than others. Inclinations that allow you to get 2 karma on a failed roll instead of 1. That's so powerful. Inclinations that allow you to share karma with others if they're around. I'm sorry, that's not necessarily an inclination. I think that's part of one of the heroic paths. But there's the inclinations are great. They allow customization, but it doesn't take long in the game to realize which ones are S tier level inclinations and which ones are never pick that one, unless you're just an awesome role player and you don't really care about this is more effective, much, much more effective than others. So those are my likes, my dislikes, and I think it's worth your time. I do think if you want a fantasy mayhem game, maybe if you're just introducing role playing to someone, take a look at this book. Take a look at what DM Scotty has done. Easy D6 is not hard to teach. It's fast for people that are are new to the hobby, they don't have to worry about different funny math rocks. It's just the tried, tested, and true D6. And it is a game that does work. Will I come back to it? Perhaps as I attempt to introduce more people to the hobby, I think this would be a good gateway into a fantasy type game. I have a slight preference, I think, in terms of rules light. I think I have a slight preference for the total party skills system, in that I do think there's more progression, longevity. You can see over time things. I like the skill system and the way they use a D6 in that game as well. But it's a D6 pool, not a pool. You add the D6 together. Anyway, at some time maybe I'll talk about that game as well. This one's just about easy D6, so check it out. I think you can find it on Drive-Thru RPG is where I got my copy. I'm not sure if it's available on other outlets. It might be, but check it out. Easy D6 by DM Scotty. Thanks for watching. This is my thoughts on this game that we recently played. My next one, if these are interesting for anyone out there, I'm probably going to be talking a little bit about this. I've been introducing this game to my in-person group, and we've been having a fantastic time. Now, lots of things to like, equal number of things to dislike, and some surprising finds as we've given this a try. So that's Heroes Unlimited, a superhero game that we're trying as something new. And I'll talk about that maybe on the next one. Thanks for watching. Again, appreciate the comments, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.